Explosions tore through the Mercy's dawn, shaking its sterile walls as emergency lights fought to stay alight amidst the chaos. The hospital ship, a floating sanctuary in the cold expanse of space, carried refugees, medics, and patients fleeing from the latest skirmishes between the Coalition and the Krell Dominion. Its unarmed hull bore the universal insignia of peace and neutrality, a beacon of hope even in the darkest times. Yet, as alarms blared and the ship shuddered from impacts, it became clear that hope alone would not save them. Captain Elena Tarov gripped the edge of the command console, her knuckles white. "Status report," she barked, her voice cutting through the cacophony of panic. "Krell warships closing in fast," Lieutenant Ramesh replied, his voice trembling. "Shields are down to 15%. They're ignoring all hails." Tarov's stomach churned. The Krell, a race known for their brutal efficiency and disregard for intergalactic treaties, had violated every rule of war by targeting the Mercy's dawn. Her crew of healers and volunteers had no means to defend themselves against the Krell's arsenal. She glanced at the viewport, where streaks of plasma fire illuminated the void. "Divert all power to engines," Tarov ordered. "We need to get out of their range." "It's no use," Ramesh said grimly. "They're faster." Tarov's mind raced. She refused to let her crew and the hundreds of innocents aboard become another grim statistic in this endless war. Forcing her mind to steady, she zeroed in on the distress beacon, the only lifeline in the spiraling chaos. "Send out a wideband emergency signal," she commanded. "Someone has to hear us." The comms officer hesitated, fear etched on his face. "Captain, we're deep in contested space. The chances of someone hearing us are slim. Just do it." As the signal went out, the Mercy's dawn shuddered violently. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. A deafening roar filled the bridge as the artificial gravity flickered. Tarov was thrown to the floor, her vision swimming. She struggled to her feet, blood trickling from a gash on her forehead. "Incoming transmission," Ramesh shouted. Tarov stumbled to the console. The screen crackled, resolving into the grim visage of a Krell commander. His pale, scaled face and glinting yellow eyes radiated cold malice. "Surrender," he hissed, "and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will obliterate you." Tarov's jaw tightened. "This is a hospital ship. We are unarmed. Your actions are a violation of every known treaty." The Krell commander's lips curled into a mockery of a smile. "Treaties are for the weak." Before she could respond, the transmission cut off. The Mercy's dawn shuddered again, a hull breach warning blaring through the speakers. "Captain, multiple signatures on long-range sensors." Ramesh yelled. "It's Earth's fleet." Relief and disbelief surged through Tarov. "Patch them through." The voice that came through was calm and resolute. "This is Admiral Marcus Kane of the United Earth Armada. Hold your position, Mercy's dawn. We've got you." Through the viewport, Earth's war fleet emerged from hyperspace, sleek destroyers and imposing carriers glinting with the insignia of hope and power. Tarov's breath caught as the flagship, Resolute Vanguard, took the lead. "Krell ships, this is Admiral Kane." The broadcast boomed across the comms. "You have attacked a neutral hospital ship, a crime that will not go unanswered. Stand down, or face the full might of Earth's fleet." The Krell warships hesitated, their formation faltering. But instead of retreating, they opened fire on the Earth fleet. Plasma bolts and kinetic rounds streaked through space, igniting a ferocious battle. "They're insane," Ramesh muttered. "No," Tarov said, her voice grim. "They're testing us." The Resolute Vanguard surged forward, its railguns firing devastating salvos that tore through Krell's shields and hulls. Smaller Earth ships flanked the enemy, executing precise maneuvers that showcased humanity's mastery of space combat. Despite the chaos, Admiral Kane's voice remained steady. "Captain Tarov," he said, "we're deploying escorts to cover your escape. Prepare for evacuation." "Understood," she replied, though her heart ached at the thought of abandoning the ship. "You heard the Admiral," she told her crew. "Get the patients to the shuttles." As her team scrambled to evacuate, Tarov remained on the bridge, watching the battle unfold. The Earth fleet fought with a ferocity that seemed to catch the Krell off guard. Earth's defiance, often dismissed as reckless, now stood as a beacon of unwavering resolve that stunned even the Krell. Today, it worked in their favor. But the Krell were relentless. A massive dreadnought, bristling with weapons, emerged from the shadows, dwarfing even the resolute vanguard. It unleashed a barrage that crippled 2 Earth destroyers. "We're losing ships," Ramesh said, his voice taut with fear. Tarav's fists clenched. "Come on, Kane. Show them what we're made of." As if on cue, the resolute vanguard launched its secret weapon. A pulse of blue energy rippled from its core, temporarily disabling the Krell dreadnought's shields. Earth's ships seized the moment, targeting weak points with pinpoint accuracy. The dreadnought erupted in a brilliant explosion, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. Cheers erupted on the bridge of the Mercy's Dawn, but Tarav knew better than to celebrate prematurely. "Status?" she asked. "The Krell are retreating," Ramesh reported, disbelief coloring his tone. "For now," she muttered. Her eyes lingered on the wreckage scattered across the void. The cost of their survival was steep, but Earth had sent a message loud and clear. Humanity would not stand by while innocents were slaughtered. As the last Krell ship vanished into hyperspace, Admiral Kane's voice returned. "Captain Tarav, the fleet will escort you to safety. You and your crew did well holding out." "Thank you, Admiral," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved us all." Kane's tone softened, resolute but warm. "We never abandon our own. Not now, not ever." Tarav turned to the viewport, watching as the Earth fleet formed a protective perimeter around the Mercy's Dawn. For the first time since the attack began, she allowed herself a moment of hope. Humanity's spirit, forged in adversity and tempered by resolve, had prevailed once more. Tension rippled through the crew of the Mercy's Dawn as the asteroid belt loomed ahead, its jagged rocks grinding together and icy debris catching the starlight like shards of shattered glass. The faint hum of the ship's engines seemed dwarfed by the silence of the void. Captain Elena Tarav stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the holographic display that detailed their precarious route. Each asteroid represented a potential death sentence for their crippled ship. "Engage manual navigation," Tarav ordered, her voice steady but sharp. "One wrong calculation and we're done." Lieutenant Ramesh nodded, his hands flying over the controls. "Adjusting trajectory." "Escorts are in position, Captain." Tarav's gaze flicked to the viewport. The Earth fleet's smaller ships had formed a protective barrier around the Mercy's Dawn, their engines flaring as they took point. The sight was both comforting and sobering. These soldiers were risking their lives to shield a hospital ship.
"Keep comms open," she said.
"I want updates from every escort." "Yes, Captain," replied the comms officer. The ship shuddered as it entered the outer edge of the asteroid field. Proximity alarms blared, and Tarav gripped the edge of her console to steady herself. The bridge crew worked in tense silence, their focus unbroken. "Incoming debris," Ramesh warned. "Adjusting thrusters." The Mercy's Dawn lurched as Ramesh deftly maneuvered the ship, narrowly avoiding a massive shard of ice spinning through the void. Tarav exhaled slowly, her heart pounding. "Admiral Kane is on the line," the comms officer announced. "Put him through," Tarav said. The Admiral's voice crackled over the speakers, calm but edged with urgency. "Captain Tarav, we've detected Krell signatures closing in on your position. They're using the asteroid field as cover." "Understood, Admiral," Tarav replied, her tone steady despite the tension coiling in her chest. "How long until they reach us?" 10 minutes, maybe less," Kane said, his voice calm but firm. The crackling sounds of distant battle underscored his words, a subtle reminder of the stakes. "We'll hold them off as long as we can. Don't waste it." Tarav glanced at Ramesh. "Can we increase speed?" "Not without risking a collision," he replied. "We're already pushing the limits of the thrusters." "Then we'll have to hold them off," Tarav said. "Weapon status?" "Minimal," Ramesh admitted. "We have point defense lasers, but they won't do much against Krell ships." "We'll make it work," Tarav said. She opened a ship-wide channel. "All hands, This is the captain. Prepare for combat. Our escorts are doing their best to protect us, but we may need to defend ourselves. Stay alert and trust in your training. A chorus of acknowledgments echoed through the bridge speakers. Tarav's chest tightened with pride and fear. Her crew was exhausted, their nerves frayed, but they stood ready. Minutes stretched like an eternity as the Mercy's Dawn navigated the asteroid field, the groaning hull and the hiss of escaping air amplifying the already taut nerves of the crew. The faint vibrations of debris glancing off the shields were constant reminders of the ship's fragility. The Earth escort started ahead, engaging the first wave of Krell ships. Explosions flared in the distance, brief bursts of light against the darkness. Krell ships breaking through, Ramesh reported. 2 frigates on an intercept course. Evasive maneuvers, Tarav ordered. Bring the point defense systems online. The frigates closed in, their sleek, angular hulls bristling with weapons. The Mercy's Dawn fired its point defense lasers, thin beams of light that struck one frigate's shields but barely slowed it down. The second frigate launched a volley of plasma bolts, several of which slammed into the Mercy's hull. The ship shuddered violently, alarms screaming. Hull breach in Sector 7, a technician reported. Emergency bulkheads are holding. Return fire, Tarav commanded. Target their engines. Ramesh adjusted the aim of the point defense lasers, focusing on the first frigate's engines. The concentrated fire punched through its weakened shields, sending it spiraling into an asteroid. The impact detonated the frigate in a fiery explosion. Cheers erupted on the bridge, but Tarav raised a hand. Focus. The second frigate is still a threat. Before the second frigate could fire again, one of the Earth escorts swooped in, its railguns tearing through the Krell ship's hull. The frigate disintegrated in a blaze of light. Escort Alpha reporting. A voice crackled over the comms. Frigates neutralized. We're moving to rejoin the fleet. Understood, Alpha, Tarav replied. Good work. The battle continued to rage as more Krell ships entered the asteroid field. The Mercy's Dawn pressed on, its escorts forming a protective barrier. Tarav's focus never wavered, her mind racing through contingencies and commands. At last, the jagged chaos of the asteroid field gave way, revealing the edge of safety. The Coalition outpost, its turrets locked and ready, a fortress against the void. We've made it, Ramesh said, his voice tinged with disbelief. Not yet, Tarav said. Keep the ship steady. We're not safe until we're docked. As the Mercy's Dawn approached the outpost, the Krell ships began to retreat. The sight of the Coalition's formidable defenses was enough to deter them. Tarav allowed herself a brief moment of relief before addressing her crew. All hands, stand down from combat readiness, she said. You've done an incredible job. Rest if you can. We'll need our strength for what comes next. The bridge erupted in muted applause, the weary sound of relief from a crew that had been riding the edge of exhaustion for hours. Tarav watched the outpost grow larger in the viewport, a beacon of safety in the endless void. For now, they were safe, but she knew the fight was far from over. Captain Tarav stepped into the Coalition outpost's hangar, the cold hum of machinery and the clang of tools meeting her ears. Controlled chaos engulfed the space as engineers and medics swarmed the battered Mercy's Dawn. Crews of engineers and medics swarmed the battered hospital ship, their movements swift and purposeful. Captain Elena Tarav disembarked, her boots clicking against the cold, metallic floor as she scanned the bustling scene. Any relief she felt was fleeting. The battered Mercy's Dawn and the knowledge of the Krell fleet lurking nearby twisted her stomach with unease. Captain Tarav, Admiral Marcus Kane called, striding toward her with the confidence of a man who had faced down death more times than he could count. His expression was a mixture of urgency and determination. We need to talk. Tarav nodded and followed him to a secure briefing room. The door hissed shut behind them, muffling the distant hum of activity. Kane gestured to a holographic map projected above the central table. It displayed the surrounding sector, highlighting the asteroid belt they had just escaped and the Krell fleet regrouping nearby. The Krell's retreat was a feint, Kane began without preamble. Their main fleet is still out there, and they're massing for a full-scale assault. This outpost is their next target. Tarav's stomach tightened. What's our plan? Kane's jaw tightened. We're mounting a counteroffensive. If we strike before they organize, we stand a chance. But we're stretched thin, and the Mercy's Dawn is in no shape to fight. It's a hospital ship, Tarav reminded him. Our priority is saving lives, not taking them. And you've done that admirably, Kane replied, his tone softening. But we'll need every able-bodied crew member for this fight. The Krell won't show mercy if they break through here. Tarav exhaled slowly, her mind racing. The idea of repurposing her crew for combat was abhorrent, but the reality of their situation left no room for idealism. What do you need from us? She asked. Kane's eyes met hers. We'll integrate your medics into our combat teams. Your engineers can assist in fortifying our defenses. And you, he hesitated. We'll need you to command one of the auxiliary fleets. You've proven you can keep a cool head under pressure. That kind of leadership will save lives. Tarav's heart sank, but she squared her shoulders. Understood. What's the timeline? The Krell will be here within 6 hours, Kane said grimly. We're working on a strategy to exploit their weaknesses, but time isn't on our side. As Kane outlined the battle plan, Tarav couldn't help but feel the weight of her decisions. The line between survival and sacrifice had never been thinner. She left the briefing room with a heavy heart and immediately began coordinating her crew's new roles. The hangar buzzed like a war engine coming to life, its metallic walls amplifying the clang of machinery and the bark of sharp directives. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair damaged ships and reinforce the outpost's defenses. Medics from the Mercy's Dawn triaged wounded soldiers, their hands steady despite the chaos around them. Tarav moved through the organized mayhem, her presence commanding attention and respect. She paused to speak with her chief engineer, a wiry man named Grant Lasker, who was supervising the installation of upgraded shielding on one of the outpost's turrets. How's it coming, Lasker? Tarav asked. We're making progress, he replied, wiping sweat from his brow. But there's only so much we can do in the time we have. These shields were designed for starships, not stationary defenses. Do what you can, Tarav said. If these turrets hold, they'll buy us the time we need. She continued her rounds, checking in with the medics and offering words of encouragement where she could. Despite the mounting pressure, the determination in her crew's faces bolstered her resolve. Hours passed in a blur, and the warning alarms finally blared. The Krell fleet had arrived. Tarav stood on the command deck of her assigned ship, the Resolute Dawn, a lightly armed frigate repurposed for tactical coordination. From her position, she had a clear view of the battlefield. The Krell fleet erupted from hyperspace, their angular ships slicing through the darkness, blood-red markings pulsing like wounds in the fabric of space. All units, report, Tarav ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. One by one, the captains of the coalition ships confirmed their readiness. The defensive line formed a crescent around the outpost, a calculated formation designed to funnel the Krell into a kill zone. Enemy ships closing in, her tactical officer reported. First wave, 10 frigates and 3 cruisers. Hold steady, Tarav said. Let them come to us. The Krell ships opened fire, their plasma cannons unleashing a torrent of energy. Coalition shields flared under the onslaught, but the defensive line held firm. Tarav watched as the enemy ships advanced, their formation tightening as they neared the kill zone. Now, she commanded. The coalition fleet unleashed their counterattack. Railguns and missile salvos erupted from the defensive line, converging on the Krell ships with devastating precision. One frigate exploded in a fiery burst, followed by another. The cruisers attempted to return fire, but the concentrated assault overwhelmed their shields. Enemy reinforcements incoming, the tactical officer said, urgency lacing his tone. 2 dreadnoughts, heavy class. Tarav's jaw tightened. The battle had only just begun. The Resolute Dawn shuddered violently, alarms wailing and the acrid smell of burning circuits filling the air as plasma bolts from the Krell dreadnoughts ripped through the coalition defensive line. Captain Elena Tarov clung to the edge of the command console, barking orders to her crew as chaos unfolded around her. The tactical display showed the grim reality. The dreadnoughts were punching through their defenses with ruthless precision. Shields at 40% and dropping, the tactical officer reported. We can't take another direct hit. Divert auxiliary power to shields, Tarov commanded. And get me firing solutions on those dreadnoughts. The ship's weapons officer worked frantically, sweat beading on his forehead. We're locked on, but our railguns can't cut through their armor. We need heavier firepower. Then buy us time, Tarov said. Target their weapon systems. We'll slow them down until reinforcements arrive. The Resolute Dawn fired its railguns, the kinetic projectiles striking one of the dreadnoughts with pinpoint accuracy. Explosions flared along the dreadnought's hull as its forward weapons array was disabled. A brief cheer erupted on the bridge, but Tarov silenced it with a sharp wave of her hand.
Stay focused, she said.
The second dreadnought is still fully operational. As the battle raged, the coalition strategy began to unfold. Smaller, faster ships weaved between the dreadnoughts, drawing fire away from the heavier vessels. Admiral Kane's voice crackled over the comms, calm and resolute. All units, this is Admiral Kane. We're initiating Phase 2. Tarov, your fleet will flank the dreadnoughts while we draw their fire. Hit them where it hurts. Understood, Admiral, Tarov replied. All ships, follow my lead. Target the dreadnought's engines and propulsion systems. Let's pin them down. The Resolute Dawn led the charge, weaving through the battlefield with calculated precision. Its railguns and missile salvos hammered the second dreadnought, but the Krell's shields held strong. As the coalition ships closed in, one of the smaller frigates took a direct hit and exploded, a fiery blossom in the cold void. We're losing ships, Tarov's tactical officer said, his voice tight with urgency. Stay the course, Tarov said firmly. We can't let them regroup. Just as the second dreadnought's shields began to falter, a massive energy surge rippled across the battlefield. The Krell flagship tore through hyperspace, its monstrous silhouette swallowing the void. Pulsing weapons arrays cast a crimson glow, sending an unmistakable message of doom through the coalition fleet. Flagship detected, the tactical officer reported. It's powering up its main cannon. Tarov's heart pounded. The Krell flagship's main cannon was infamous for obliterating entire fleets. She gripped the console tightly, her mind racing. Then an idea struck her. Patch me through to Admiral Kane, she ordered. Kane's face appeared on the comms. Tarov, we're running out of time. I have a plan, Tarov said. We need to draw the flagship's fire away from the fleet. If we can disable its main cannon, the rest of our ships stand a chance. Kane hesitated, then nodded. Do it. But be careful. All units, this is Captain Tarov, she announced over the fleet-wide channel. We're targeting the flagship. Concentrate fire on its cannon while the Resolute Dawn leads a diversionary attack. The Resolute Dawn broke formation, hurtling toward the flagship with reckless speed. Plasma bolts streaked past the frigate as Tarov's crew executed evasive maneuvers. The flagship's cannon began to charge, its ominous glow intensifying. We're in position, the weapons officer said. Firing on the cannon now. The Resolute Dawn unleashed everything it had. Railguns, missiles, and lasers converged on the flagship's main cannon, hammering its shield with relentless force. Other coalition ships joined the assault, their combined firepower overwhelming the Krell's defenses. Their shields are down, the tactical officer reported. Direct hit on the cannon. A deafening explosion consumed the flagship as its main cannon fractured in a cataclysm of fire and shrapnel. The shockwave rippled outward, tearing through smaller Krell ships and granting the coalition fleet a critical reprieve. Cheers erupted on the Resolute Dawn, but Tarov's focus remained sharp. Status on the flagship, she asked. Still operational, but heavily damaged, the tactical officer replied. Admiral Kane's voice cut through the comms. Well done, Tarov. We've got them on the ropes. All units, push forward and finish this. The coalition fleet surged ahead, their combined firepower overwhelming the remaining Krell forces. One by one, The dreadnoughts and frigates fell, until only the crippled flagship remained. Tariv watched as the resolute vanguard, Admiral Kane's flagship, delivered the final blow. The Krell flagship erupted in a brilliant explosion, signaling the end of the battle. As the battlefield fell silent, Tariv slumped against the console, exhaustion washing over her. The resolute Dawn was battered but intact, and her crew erupted into cheers and applause. "We did it," the tactical officer said, a weary smile on his face. Tariv managed a faint smile, her voice tinged with both pride and sorrow. "Yes, we did. But the cost was steep, and we can't let their sacrifice be forgotten." She stood, her gaze fixed on the debris-strewn void. "Honor the fallen, and tend to the wounded. We've earned this victory, but the fight isn't over. Let's make sure it wasn't in vain." The resolute Dawn turned back toward the Coalition outpost, its engines flickering against the backdrop of the stars. Humanity had weathered another crucible, its scars etched deep into the stars. Yet amid the wreckage and loss, their unyielding spirit burned brighter, a blazing beacon of hope for the trials yet to come.